Sahana Vavatu Sahano Gunatu Sahaviryam Karavavahi Tejasvinavaditam Mastuma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May he nourish us both. May we work together with great vigor and strength. And may our study also be full of vigor and full of effectiveness. May we not disagree or cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So we begin as usual with some questions which will lead us then into probably the remaining portion of the 6th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So are there any questions?
Swamiji, do all humans have the Atman present in them?
Do all humans have Atman present in them? The Vedanta philosophy says that there is only one existence, that the Atman is one with that one existence. So therefore, you see, sometimes we think that the Atman is a soul that is separate, and there are some philosophies that would hold that idea. For example, Sankhya philosophy, Yoga philosophy would hold that idea that there's a separation, a dualistic system. So as many people as there are, that many souls are there. But this they call Purusha, derived from Puriya city and Purna, fullness. Lest you make the mistake that the indweller of the city is only inside something like a caged bird. When we discover it, we find it's present everywhere. The Vedantic terminology, very often, more than likely in the Upanishads, uses the term Atman. That means self. But in our interpretation, we have so many different selves. And these different selves we can call personality. Personality really derived from persona, meaning a mask. So when we study personal development through such systems as the Enneagram, we cannot avoid the other side of the essence of truth. What is the truthful self which is within you? And we can, you see, our limited language will say within, without, above, below. We'll give a location to it. So the temptation is to think that there's an Atman inside us. And for meditation purposes, for convenience sake, as a good starting point, we can see that the kingdom of heaven is within us in the language of Jesus. That is, that the Atman is within. But when we go closer to it, we discover that there's a pervading entity there, and there's no within and there's no without ultimately. And that is why we say that Atman is one with Brahman. Brahman, that one existence that is everywhere. Atman, the seeming separated self, is actually one with it. Our mindset is of individuality, and as we grow over the years, we become more and more self-conscious. But self-conscious means conscious of the psychophysical self. That is like a machine with an engine, or a car with an engine. And so that association with it, Patanjali Yoga Sutras defines egoism as mixing up the seer with the seen, the subject with the object. And when we study the subject of meditation, what is the object of it? The object of it is to merge all of that so that there is no separation ultimately between the seer and the seen, the knower and the known, subject, object, so that the knower, knowledge, and the knower, the knowledge, and the known all merge and become the same thing. Even the awkwardness of the language, become, but is actually there already. It's not missing or absent. So, short answer to your question is that all beings have this divinity within them, and when we say Sarva Bhuta, all beings, we're not just referring to the human beings. The human being has the advantage, the equipment, the capacity for this inner self-discovery. Because we have the instrumentation of what is called buddhi, intellect. Intellect is a means for discerning and deciphering and getting, in principle, this infinite invisible that sits within us, and the capacity then to follow it up with a resolution where we carry practice to the end with great resolve and the quality of strength, patience, perseverance, purity. These are the qualities earmarked by Swami Vivekananda that we require to, as it were, reach our goal. We have to couch it in this language, as it were. Apparently, these are caveat phrases that really clarify things for us, and we take on board that our position requires convenience language. So every being, and we'll discover this here because there's some important questions associated with it, is evolving toward that position of fullness. But it's not that fullness was ever absent. The realization of it is absent.
I have a question as well, Swami. On our path, how important is it to remember not to take the world too seriously? Is that a helpful tool?
Yes. So
everybody laughs.
No, because we're laughing because see how many people took Ireland's defeat seriously. But it's just a game. So Ireland played rugby, Six Nations, important thing for Ireland. Ireland, one of the top teams there, lost to their rival, we won't mention who, for political politeness. But were people devastated? Were people going to go and commit suicide over it? What was going to happen? Were people angry about it? Were people disappointed about it? Did people cry over it? Some may have. But it's only a game. And the game of rugby is a very interesting game because all the players is rough and tumble, as you know. So they all go and attack each other violently, and goodness knows what happens in the scrum. The referee can't see everything. His eyes are not everywhere. They all come out with broken noses, injured legs, goodness knows what. And yet they all shake hands afterwards and congratulate each other, whether they won or whether they lost. Of course, if they lost, there's some disappointment, but they can recover the next time. And after all, it's just a game. So to revalue the whole of life in this way, and after all, to put things in perspective. So when we are involved and when our attention is directed toward trivial pursuit, there's a game called Trivial Pursuit, and most of us are engaged in it. We find that the world seems to be so important. You see that Vesper song that we sing, you see, that when we are devoted in this way to the Lord or to truth, we find that things come into perspective, and the whole world, which was so threatening to us, which was so seemed to be against us, which we had to struggle against, is just a small puddle, a small mark in the ground caused by not a cow, a calf, a mere calf, just a tiny, tiny, not even a puddle, a small few drops in a small hollow. And when we put things in perspective like that, and we have the opportunity in modern science to do that, because when we look out at the vast universe, we take the Hubble telescope, for example, studying an absent, a small space where nothing visibly is there, and focusing the lens on just that small square inch, as it were, and we discover what we discover. The whole thing is full of galaxies. Now, a galaxy is enormous. We can't even imagine the solar system, let alone the galaxy. We can imagine it in abstract terms.
It's 100,000 light years across.
100,000 light years across is the estimate. And it's only an estimate. We don't know, because things are moving away. And this is only the visible universe, restricted by the speed of light. 186,000 miles per second is the speed limit of the universe. And that's all our observation can take. And when we go to that edge, then we'll find that there's
something going faster.
There's another thing. Is this still on?
Yes, it's
oh, okay. So when we put all that in perspective and see how small things are here, then it gives us some kind of shock in the first place, because we thought this was all. You see, we tend to view this world, no matter if we think that the sun is the center of our solar system and the earth goes around that sun, we still don't in our hearts believe it. We still use the language, the sun rises and the sun sets. The sun doesn't do anything. It's the earth that spins around it, 18 miles per second. Off it goes. And its inertia stops it from collapsing into the sun. And then we also say, look at the stars up in the sky. We put ourselves in not only in a geocentric position, but an egocentric position. Why should we say up? When we go out beyond the atmosphere, the Earth's atmosphere, there's no up, there's no down, there's no sideways, no right, no left. It's all the same and equally in all directions. So you can see how we position ourselves in this habitual egoistic way. And this egoistic position is one of the great obstacles stopping us from understanding this profound truth of this Atman that sits within. So let's come now then to how this fits into the Bhagavad Gita. And let's review where we've come a little bit. So you see there's a mistaken view generally that there are two groups. There are the ascetics and the saints, and then the others. The special people, the extraordinary people, and the ordinary people. I came across this in London. So some devotees, I was staying at their house, and they were saying, but you know, this great spiritual practice, this sadhana, this element of concentration, this meditation, this intense tapasya, you know, it's all right for monks and all that. You're extraordinary. We're just ordinary people. I said, everybody is extraordinary. Don't think for a moment that there's this division. And the whole Bhagavad Gita is aimed at the ordinary salt of the earth person, the ordinary you and me, the ordinary person beset with all kinds of seemingly difficult problems and challenges, only because we don't take the world as a game of rugby. We take it seriously. And therefore we feel seriously impacted. So that perspective is lost. That this means it's a lack of viveka, a lack of discernment. Therefore, viveka is necessary. We have to have a more discerning attitude, and this is derived from Shastra, from Scripture. And Scripture is just an example of somebody who has asserted very adamantly, with unwavering conviction, that truth is one, that God exists, that the soul is real. On what basis? On the basis of direct perception. Ultimately, direct perception is our own proof. When you use the word proof, it's a very awkward word. Very seldom should we use it. We can use, is there evidence? But in science, for example, proof is very, very much reserved. We find there is evidence. Currently, there is evidence for A, B, and C. Currently. It might change later, and the evidence might lead to a different conclusion. So the inference of it is summarized as the simple example, there's no smoke without fire. When you see smoke, you'll infer there's fire. And smoke in every sense. I have a joke, I only smoke when I'm on fire. Otherwise I don't smoke. I heard once somebody say, and I adopted it, a cigarette is something with fire on one end and a fool on the other. Take that as you want. So it is not true, really, that this teaching held in this Bhagavad Gita and any other scripture is for the extraordinary people, for those great ascetics, for those unusual saints, for those particularly gifted. No, it is for every single person, from the lowest, so-called, to the highest, of any status. As long as you are human, and and you have the capacity for thinking and directing thought, as long as you have the capacity for an emotional life, as long as you have the capacity to work and move, then you have the capacity for this sense of freedom, this sense of liberation, this goal. This is what is called paramata, higher knowledge. And what is higher knowledge is described as purity of mind. And what that purity gives us is peace of mind. And that is what everybody is seeking. There's nobody who says, I want a turbulent mind, I want a turbulent life. May everything be saturated with problems. Nobody says it. And then on the other side, everybody seems to be saturated with problems. Then what will we do? This whole book is a formula to solve these problems. It's a problem-solving manual. So there are three important things when we discuss this question of dhyana yoga, of meditation. We can say that firstly, we require one-pointedness, ekagra, one-pointedness. How easy is it to get one-pointedness? And yet we know that there are tremendous examples of it. It was said that Napoleon, for example, having made all his plans, then went and sat in the battlefield with all the cannons going off and people dying left, right, and center, and the possibility of victory or of failure, started working out mathematical problems and was absorbed in that exercise. Beethoven, for example, considered to be a musical genius, never knew when he ate or when he slept. Food was left outside his door. So we can define concentration in this way. Concentration is the direction of our attention to the extent that there is a sense of a loss of time. When we no longer have a sense of time, when we no longer see how much time passed, when we get so absorbed in something that there is no sense of how long we were sitting or how long we were engaged in activity, this really is a sense of one-pointedness. And we have examples in our own life where we can get absorbed in something. And then we check the watch and say, oh, is that the time? You must have noticed in your own life that this occurs. So one-pointedness is not an unusual thing. It is not a specialist thing. It's not for those who have a high level of ability. It's for the average person that has the capacity to redirect their attention from one thing to another. And all of us have it. We find it happens to us naturally, where something becomes interesting and we get absorbed in it. Maybe there's an interesting speech. Hopefully it's mine, but probably not.
Of course it is.
And we get absorbed in it. See? Or there's an interesting documentary, or there's an interesting book, or there's an interesting conversation. Sooner or later we realize, oh, see how the time passed. So to review, one-pointedness is necessary. And then setting boundaries in life, having rules of life that encourage an attitude of friendliness and positivity in life. So you may say that we start off really with a sense with karma yoga. Karma yoga really seems to evolve into dhyana yoga, meditation. When we have mastered the capturing of attention, the one-pointedness in our waking, working life, then sitting for meditation becomes easy and natural, and the attention glides across the external border and goes inwards. So we have to organize our life in this way, and that leads to an attitude of equality everywhere. So far, this is what this Bhagavad Gita has told us. Evenness of mind, skill in action, and evenness in mind. That means in our normal, so-called normal work of life, instead of abandoning all our activities to get some kind of peace, it's the opposite. We engage in activities peacefully, with a sense of joy, a sense of enthusiasm, so that physically 60 to 70 trillion cells of the body vibrate well. thrive on this, thrive on the joy of all our activities. And so, the next question really is, how do we achieve this? And we described here that it is through two things, two practices. One practice really is Abhyasa Yoga. And if we read Patanjali Yoga Sutras, in the beginning sutras, we find exactly that there is Abhyasa, Vairagya, these twofold methods of approaching life and practicing. What is Abhyasa? Constant remembrance, constantly bringing the mind back, bringing the attention back. Whenever it wanders, notice it and bring it back. When we notice the attention wandering, what is the inferential conclusion? I am not that. I'm the director of it. I am no longer willing, a resolve has to be there, I'm no longer willing to be the slave. I wish to be the master of it. I wish to be the masterly director of it. I wish to take this beam, this laser that we call attention, gather it in. Light is not always in the form of a laser. This light is scattered. Fortunately, that means we can see all these various objects within the scope of our vision. When we gather all of those photons and direct it in a powerful way, it becomes so powerful it can cut metal, a laser beam. Same thing with our attention, a gathering in. Technically, this gathering in is called pratyahara, that is gathering in all the energies, like a tortoise gathering in its limbs. And once it's all gathered, then we have the capacity to consciously, deliberately, in a planned, directed way, beam this attention towards something that is pure and revealing. And so, how to achieve this one-pointedness? Sri Krishna comes up with this, see, na kinchidapi chintayat, think of nothing else but me. And that means that we have to deal with all the trifles in life and take those away. We were discussing earlier in the day that life is very short. I'm not sure how the subject came up, but I had to assure people that it would be very rare for any of us to survive beyond a century. That's not long in human terms, and it's definitely not long in terms of the history of this earth, which is 4.3 or so billion years. Let's say 4.5 billion years. And in terms of the entire universe, which currently is speculated to be 13.8 billion years, if you believe in the cosmological evolution as it is told today. So what is your life, my life? And what should we do with this mere speck that seems the whole of existence to us? We should do something useful to us for it. We should take stock, firstly, and see what our life is, what is our current status quo, gather all our forces, and with great determination understand, firstly, what is the purpose of our life and the goal, and then work toward that, knowing that every second that arrives is a blank check, never been used before. It gives us the opportunity to put something fresh in, something new, something that is not bound to the small circle of experience that we call I, something that is used for others, making this ego an open channel for divine grace to work everywhere. And so this karma yoga evolves to dhyana yoga, meditation, and this evolves really to bhakti yoga, because as a result we become loving, giving, generous. We see this oneness everywhere, and we spontaneously serve, we spontaneously react to it, we spontaneously are open to this. We yield to this compassion without any effort, without any deliberate strategy about it. And so the universe itself is auspicious, and we have to have that attitude. Vishvam tat padram yadavanti devaha. This universe is auspicious, it's full of goodness. It's because God looks after it. See that in the Bible? God made the world and saw that it was good. How is it that we see it's bad? is because we're not looking at it from God's throne. But God looks at it and sees it's all good. And we blame God for everything. Unsuspecting God sits there, people shouting, shaking their fists. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? A bit like saying the earth gets into a nuclear situation, man gets foolish and blows the entire planet up. And any survivors start shaking their fists at the sun. The unsuspecting sun smiles and radiates still and has no idea about it. So in the similar way, it is not God who is personally responsible for our difficulties. It's your own wrong thinking. Correct your thinking and things get better. Things get adjusted. And we require this sense of appreciation. So what is the formula I often give? It's OATS, O-A-T-S, just to remind you. There are so many things we take for granted. And unless we are able to observe them in a sporting way, with a sense of light humor, but keen observation still, then there's no possibility of appreciation. So many opportunities for this appreciation and joy and internal rapture we avoid. This escapes us. We take for granted that the sun shines and gives us solar energy. We take for granted that the seasons rotate. We take for granted that the drama occurs where snow melts and gets evaporated into clouds and condenses as rainfall and nourishes us through food. All this we simply take for granted as if it were our right. We take the body for granted as if it were our right. But according to the Bhagavad Gita, there's only one right we have. What is that? The right to work. See, this environment we're in, human rights, rights about this, rights about that, gender rights, human dignity, and so on. But we only have the right to work. Why? Because nothing is ours. Nothing belongs to us. And we are privileged just to do some service through work. All work, therefore, translated and transformed into worship, all becomes, first of all, useful, positive, joyful, and also becomes in our favor. It reforms the unconscious mind. And it's the habit level that we have to reform. That's what is necessary. God's in his heaven and all is right with the world. This was Browning who said that. And so we take it in a different way. What is the color of your glasses is a good question. We see the world depending on, you get the expression rose-colored glasses, seeing everything through rose-colored glasses. So there's a story here actually of one of the authors of one version of the Ramayana, Ramdas. And Hanuman is in the company of his telling the story, and Hanuman says, I described flowers to this author as white flowers, as red flowers, and he's put them as white. Please, can he make a correction? And eventually, you see, the Lord had to intervene. Ram himself had to intervene and said, no. You see, from Ramdas's point of view, it's white. But Hanuman, when he wrote it, he was angry, and he was seeing it through the blood vessels, and it was red. It looked red. So, how are you viewing the world? The world becomes how you view it. As you think, so you become. And so there's an important question then that comes up here. So Arjuna asks, having understood all of this and being taught all this, Arjuna uvacha yoyam yogas tvaya proktaha samyena madhusudana etasyaham na pasyami kanchalatvam tat stitam stiram. Arjuna said, this yoga of equanimity, where we have an equal outlook everywhere and an internal peace matching it. This is taught by you, O Slayer of Madhu. I don't see any stability for it. I don't see any steadiness for it because we all know how the mind works. It's steady one moment and not the next. It's moody one moment and not the next. It's enthusiastic one moment and not the next. It's restless one moment and peaceful the next. There's no stability for it. Restlessness is the nature of the mind. And so, how do we deal with such a thing? The mind truly is of Krishna, restless, turbulent, strong, obstinate. And we don't need any further conviction to see our mind is very, very much like that. Like any animal, like a horse or something like that, and you say, please go in this direction, and it stubbornly objects. So last week we mentioned that, and we gave an example of somebody who gave me a horse, and it was not stubborn, it was ultra stubborn. It was ultra feisty. So how do we deal with that? We have to deal with that in a special way. And Krishna agrees with that. He says, see, I deem it as hard to control as the wind. Kanchalam hi manaha Krishna pramati balavat dutam tasyaham nigraham madhye vayor iva stoskaram. So, vayo, of the wind, turbulent like the wind. We can see how this works in the Irish context or any context where there are major hurricanes. We don't get hurricanes here, we're lucky. But we get in the most idyllic places, in paradise, Hawaii and so on, you get hurricanes that sweep through the landscape, uproot houses, uproot trees. How do you control such a turbulent wind? And so, as I mentioned last week, Krishna agrees with this. And he resorts to Krishna because he says, only you can tell me how to do this, how to tame the mind. Krishna, composed of two words, Krish, to plow, to process, to find a solution. And Ishna, the Lord who is able to provide for us some kind of method and some entity that has the capacity to plow through any difficulty. So the way of culturing the mind is shown by the Lord, who responds like this. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamshayam Mahabhagyo Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena Tukunteya Vairagyena Chagrahyate. We're covering the same ground, just to review. Blessed Lord said, doubtless, O mighty arm, the mind is restless, he agrees, and hard to control, but by practice and non-attachment, O son of Kunti, it can be controlled. This gives us tremendous hope. It can be controlled by these two methods. So practice of non-attachment is the auxiliary, really, to the practice of meditation. Because if we are not detached, how can we control something that we are attached to? How can we control something that we view as a subject rather than an object? And so then the next stanza comes here, and there's a concession made. A good teacher will do this. You'll agree. It's a good sales technique as well. You're a salesperson tries to sell you something, and you say, it seems a bit, it's very expensive. A good salesman will start by saying, yes, it does seem to be expensive, until you see what all the benefits are. No good salesman will ever say, no, it's not expensive. I don't think it's expensive. We agree with you before you disagree. You say yes before you say no. And so Shri Krishna gives us the same thing. So he says, Asam yatmana yatmana yogo dusprana iti me matihi vasyatmana tu yatata shakyo vaptam upayataha. See, asam yatatmana, by a man of uncontrolled self, yoga is hard to attain. I concede that. By somebody who cannot control himself, yes, but he can be attained by him who has controlled himself and who strives by right means, and we know that control is always progressive. You won't control something the next day or the next second. You won't gain anything immediately. If you did, it wasn't worth getting. If you discover God today, you'll have a military coup against him tomorrow. And so the man of self-control is he who either thinks wholesome thoughts or doesn't allow this continuous chewing the cud, mentation, reviewing things over and over again, such as resentment. You know, people say, forgive and forget. And sometimes it's easy to forgive, but forget, that may be difficult, which means you never forgave in the first place. So you strive by right means. There are people who strive by wrong means. So what would those wrong means be? If we just think about those wrong means, would be anything that has some kind of motive in it. Bearing in mind the key obstacle would be ego, the sense of I. And so Arjuna Uvacha asks this very important question. And the question amounts to this. Even if you strive in this way, and you tell me the inference is you have to do it steadily, progressively, you have to do it with practice, you have to do it with a sense of detachment. Supposing during that arduous process, we don't reach the ideal, we don't reach anywhere, we don't reach the goal. Is there any point in the first place of doing any spiritual practice? Why should I make any effort at all if there's no result at the end of the day? So there's a funny kind of example of that, of that way of thinking. Why should I sleep on the bed when I can sleep on the ground? Is a kind of funny example about it. If I'm managing what I have, why should I need something extra? All this effort went into this, and at the end of the day, what was it worth? Is it all gone? Is it all for nothing? I've not reached the goal. Then what's the point? So he phrases this question in this way, frames it, Arjuna Vacha, Ayitahi Shraddhayo Peto Yogach Chalitat Manasa Aprapya Yogasam Siddhim Kam Gatim Krishna Gachati. So uncontrolled. Arjuna said, he who is unable to control himself, though possessed of faith, whose mind deviates from yoga, what end does he meet with, O Krishna, having failed to attain perfection in yoga? He who is unable to control himself. Sri Krishna said everybody's able. Now he's saying what happens if you're unable? Though possessed of faith, you believe in the Lord, you do everything you possibly can. You have faith in the scripture, you have faith in yourself, you have faith in the teacher, you're striving hard, and yet somehow nothing is yielding. This is the fate of everybody to some great extent or less. There was a story like that of a devotee, a spiritual practitioner, who said, I'm paraphrasing, he said, I struggle hard, I'm doing japa, I'm doing meditation, but yet I don't seem to be getting anywhere. Now this question was posed to Swami Brahmananda from somebody who ultimately became the vice president of the Ramakrishna Math and Mission. Swami Yatishwarananda was the very person who posed that question. And the answer really was, look, you will struggle in the beginning, but after a while, things get easy and natural. You have to persevere. But in the beginning, of course, everything could well be a struggle, could well be difficult. But you have to persevere. Keep the goal in mind and persevere with it. And every effort is not wasted. No effort is wasted. It's a good investment. And by the way, of course, the Lord, who you're trying to reach, is investing in you. Whenever you take a breath, it's the Lord that feels that it's a good investment to keep your breath going, to keep your heart pumping, to renew all your cells, to give you pocket money for useless thinking. Such a good investment is there. We should be at least thankful for that. So what is the purpose of that investment? The confidence, the faith in you that you have the capacity to discover this inner self, if you want to put it like that. So he was unable to control himself, though possessed of faith, good intention, but still striving, but not yet getting there, and whose mind deviates from this practice of concentration. It's easy for the mind to deviate. Some sound happens outside, meditating, it strikes the ear, and immediately the concentration, the awareness goes to that side. It's very easy to happen. At some moments you'll get absorbed in this concentrated inward introspection and you won't hear anything. But at other times, as you're going in, then something comes from the outside and the immediate impulse is the attention moves toward that. So there are so many deviations. The external world is so welcoming, so beckoning, so attractive to the senses. And when we talk of the senses, we're not talking of eyes and ears, we're talking of the indriyas, the internal senses that are part and parcel of the overall internal instrument, antahkarana. Kachin no Vayavi prahastas chinabhram iva nashati apratisto mahabhayo vimodo brahmana pati. Fallen from both, does he not perish like a rent cloud without any hold? O mighty arm, deluded in the path of Brahman, does he not get rent aside? Does he not fall? Does he not perish? Does he not go to the depths of what theology calls hell? Something of that nature. A rent cloud, you see, it doesn't descend on earth as rainfall. It loses its distinctiveness in the sky. That's the idea of it. Even such can be the fate of the fallen yogi, surely. And so, etan me samshayam Krishna chetum arhasya asheshataha tvadanyaha samsasya syachita nahya upapyate. Deign to dispel, please, Lord, I beg you, completely this doubt of mine. You alone can do it, for there is none but yourself who can destroy this doubt. Sometimes we struggle in life and we have many, many doubts, and you think, who will I ask? I heard recently, be anonymous about this, somebody who had a doubt about something and saw his teacher on the balcony and said, why don't I ask him? In that same way, the Lord is nearest and dearest to us, presenting himself or herself itself in these various forms of teachers and scripture and so on. The answer is found there. The Lord, if we understand it, is nearer than breathing, closer than breathing. So why don't we have a dialogue? I have this doubt. Why do we try and harbor it ourselves? It's good to try and work things out, but at the end of it, when nothing comes from the unconscious mind as a creative impulse that solves the difficulty, and that itself comes from the Lord, comes from the original thinker of all thoughts, then should we not specifically resort to that, just as Arjuna has done it? So even the devas and the rishis come nowhere near the Lord in dispelling doubts, and so it's natural, therefore, to see you alone can solve this thing. And Sri Ramakrishna makes this remark, nothing is impossible to the incarnation of Ishvara, of God. The intricate problems pertaining, and that incarnation has not gone away. It stays with us. The intricate problems pertaining to the Jivatman, the soul, and the Paramatman are all easily solved by him. Even a child can easily understand his teachings. He is the sun of knowledge that drives away the darkness of ignorance accumulated through the ages. There's no teacher compared at all with the great teachers, the great avatars, the great incarnations. They are the supremo of all teachers. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Lord answers now. This is Bhartane Vihana Mutra Vinashastasya Vidyate Nahi Kalyana Krit Kashit Dirgatim Tata Kachati goes. Blessed Lord said, O Partha, neither in this world nor in the next is there destruction for him
who treads the paths of righteousness.
The doer of good, O my son, never comes to grief. Anybody who follows any kind of righteous path, sattva, any kind of goodness, any pure self-effort, any effort for the good of others, anything which is noble and pure, morally upright and ethical, anything that is true and sincere will have its corresponding result. And now we come, you see, to the whole benefit of having this idea of a kind of transmigration. We have the opportunity, the universe presents us with unlimited opportunities to pass the university exams. And if we fail somehow in one life, we continue. If you're traveling to the airport, as it were, by taxi, and your taxi breaks down, then should you not get another taxi and transfer all your habitual psychological baggage to the other taxi and continue your journey? Why not? If you are not part and parcel of this, if you are static, so when we say, do you believe in reincarnation? We say, no, we believe in doing away with it. Do you believe in reincarnation? No, I don't even believe in this incarnation, is another answer. Why would I believe in a reincarnation? Something remains unborn. But the means to it, the periphery, the experience, all carries on continuously. The game continues to the end. And this is the key to evolution. This is not the modern evolutionary theory. Modern evolutionary theory is a random thing with no purpose or direction. Even though it seems to have a direction, somehow the conclusion is it's directionless. It's all meaningless. It's all random. And yet there's a sequence. We're going to arrange fossils in an organized way and see how one thing obviously developed into another. And we can look at the DNA sequencing and find we all come from common ancestry.
Swami, could you just say there, if the spirit, that is perfect, this is perfect, take perfect from perfect, so that can't evolve.
No.
I mean, it's perfect to begin with. So.
No, that doesn't evolve. That's a non-evolving entity. But everything else seems to be evolving because because time is there and space is there. And as long as time is there, then we observe things in time, that is, we observe change. But if you take space away, where are you? All the objects disappear. How can you frame that or understand it? So we observe these changes, but the observer is unchanged. Not only is the observer there unchanged, but there's only one entity without a second, which means what seems to change is involved in the change itself. Swami Vivekananda's lectures on Jnana Yoga would tell us that you cannot have evolution without involution. And this is picked up by paleontologist Ter Desjardins. He frames it like this: the alpha and the omega is the same. Another way of saying what is evolving is involved in the evolutionary process. You can't have it any other way. And the supreme example is of a seed begets a tree, grows into a tree. But potential seed, potential tree, huge oak tree, is contained in that tiny seed. And the reason why Charles Darwin avoids this question, even this term evolution, is he knows evolution means unfolding. And he seldom uses it in his Origin of the Species. He talks more about descent by modification, or descent through modification, because he knows the trap. If something is unfolding, something must be there in order to evolve. You can't have something suddenly appearing. Something is already there and unfolding from within. Another way of saying, from a more subtle thing, a more causal thing, unfolding to its end result, and not stopping there, because that tree then begets a seed, and so the cycle continues. So what we call evolution is not a linear thing, as is understood today. It's not a linear thing. That's the mistake. It's a circular thing. And Swami Vivekananda puts it beautifully. A circle, endlessly, infinitely present, A, B, A, B. You can't distinguish which is A, which is B. A point on a circle, you label it A. Another point, you label it B. Which came first, the chicken or the egg, the A or the B? If it's a circle, well, any point will do. So the cause appearing as effect, the effect preceding a cause, this is a cyclical way of understanding evolution. And so this is not the modern understanding of evolution. And we come to Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, who says, see, good and bad deeds are not the direct causes of transformations. And compares it to, or the commentators will compare it to, a farmer wanting to bring the water to his fields. And he doesn't go and take a teaspoon and transfer it across, laboriously taking a bucket and transferring it across. In Zimbabwe, we have this great dam, huge, Kariba Dam, yes. Kariba Dam, beautifully constructed dam, holding so many thousands of tons of water. One wall holding it back. And how do you transfer that water from the one side to the other? You can take a teaspoon and you'll be there forever. You can take a bucket, you'll be there forever. You can take any manner of human means or mechanical means you can think of. It doesn't work. It's very simple. You simply open the floodgates and the water flows through by itself. So this is the evolutionary process. Water flowing through. Where is the origin of that water? Water itself. And it flows. And because there are obstacles in the way, it'll flow here and flow there. It'll delay the water's course to the ultimate goal, namely the ocean, if you use that example. And so in its course, naturally, it'll reconfigure and different species will be there, which unfold. And so this is the real evolutionary process that gives us such a wonderful, magnificent opportunity to continue. We can say confidently, therefore, all creatures, all beings are naturally evolving toward the same outcome, the same goal. What a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful concept that is. There is no need for any pessimism. Now, of course, should we then lay back and say, well, let it just happen, no effort is there? No, of course effort is there, because the more energy you put into it, the speedier this evolutionary process will take place. And this is what is called sadhana, spiritual practice, purification of the mind. Effort in this direction, taking the mind, being master of it, and steering it toward this divine entity, this entity that philosophy calls truth. So Sri Ramakrishna makes this wonderful comment, and the key to this whole stanza is, the doer of good never comes to grief. We put that in capital letters. The doer of good never comes to grief. Don't worry about it. So Sri Ramakrishna says, a man gets his desert in tune with his mental makeup. The Lord is the Kalpataru, the fabled desire-fulfilling tree to the devotees. Whatever you think of, whatever you want. And then Sri Ramakrishna's story is about the traveler who finds this Kalpataru, this wish-fulfilling tree. And being tired, he sits under it. He doesn't know it's a wish-fulfilling tree. And then what happens? He thinks, oh, it would be wonderful if there was a nice, comfortable bed for me to relax on. And instantly, of course, a bed appears. And he lays down there and he says, I'm very hungry. Actually, when the story goes the other way around, I'm very hungry. And then instantly a meal appears with all kinds of delicacies. Then he's sleepy after the meal. And so food appears, a bed appears, lies down. Then somebody's there to rub his feet, that appears. And then he can't believe his good luck. And he thinks instantaneously, well, I can't believe this. Imagine, I hope a tiger doesn't come and destroy the whole scene. And sure enough, of course, the tiger comes and destroys this whole thing. And he probably winds up in an undignified manner up the tree. So, because he wished, may I be saved, if we extend the story. So every thought condenses in the world in front of you. This is the power of thought. Why? Because there's only one thinker. Cosmic mind itself is the only mind that exists. And the only thought that comes through will have its penetrating effect and arrive condensed on the other side. Of course, if you doubt, then the doubt also will come and cancel it. Prapya, we'll finish off with this last stanza here. Prapya punya kritam logan poshita shashvatihi samaha shochinam srimatam gehe yoga prasto bijayati. Prapya, having attained to the worlds of the righteous, and having lived there for countless years, he who falls from this practice of yoga is reborn where? In the house of the pure and prosperous. Is there evidence for this? Yes. Can you see how Swami Vivekananda was born in the family of those who were pure and righteous? Can you see how Sri Ramakrishna also was born in unusual circumstances in the house of generous and giving people committed to truth and sincerity and worship and holiness? So the assurance is there that the evolutionary process, directed, if you will, by the divine hand, the divine helmsman pushing us forward, allows us to arrive in a suitable way, in a suitable family for suitable growth. Some family that we select. Don't complain about your family. You yourself selected it. You sat in the lift and decided, for me to fulfill all my goals, be they secular, material, worldly, or divine, I want this family because I will fulfill my goals through these. And so, we'll finish off there, and we only have a few more stanzas to go. So next week we will finish off this chapter completely and go on, if we choose to pursue it, to the next set of chapters. You see, 6th chapter begins a set. So 6 chapters, 6 chapters, 6 chapters. This is how the Bhagavad Gita is arranged. And the 7th chapter then, obviously, is the next. But I'll preempt this a little bit by the purport of what we're studying. So, if you're born into a family, you could be born into a family of wise people, yogis say. The yogis mean people are not necessarily wealthy, but facilitating spiritual life. A hugely wealthy family will not naturally and easily facilitate spiritual life. Middle class will do, and an ultra-poor family won't facilitate it either. You'll be concentrating and meditating on food, and life will be a struggle. So there'll be a suitable family that you'll be born in, maybe a family of yogis, and a birth like this is, we have to mark, very difficult to obtain in this world. See how Shankaracharya puts it. Having gone through all these lives and arriving ultimately as a human, and to boot with a male body, a controversial statement today, but true, because even today, women's rights are still not fully established in the world. And then, with the capacity to study and come across the Vedas and the Vedanta philosophy, and then come across a competent teacher, all of this given to you, would it not be a waste of a human life, to be distracted from it all and have all your efforts deviate and be childish? You should be childlike, but not childish. And so it's important to take stock and understand how fortunate and lucky you are, and be thankful for that, and make use of all these opportunities. And then, having been born in that suitable and rare family, you regain the knowledge. Your memory of it comes back, acquired in the former body. It doesn't go away. It's carried forward. The baggage is carried forward. The experience is carried forward as part of the evolutionary process. And he strives more than before for perfection. There's a greater urgency now, a greater impetus occurs, because it becomes now easier, because the opportunity now is given, an extra opportunity is given. See what a beautiful, divinely inspired evolutionary process this is. We pick this up next week. Om Shanti, 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 Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.